Katie Morrison stood at the viewing window of the transport ship and watched as the massive space station grew larger in front of her. Nexus Prime was bigger than anything she had ever seen. The metal structure stretched for miles in every direction, with lights blinking like stars across its surface. Ships from dozens of different worlds docked at ports along its outer rings. Her hands shook a little as she adjusted her uniform. At 24 years old, Katie was the youngest human ever assigned to work on a galactic research station. She had dreamed of this moment since she was a child, but now that it was happening, she felt scared and excited at the same time. The transport ship moved slowly toward one of the docking bays. Through the window, Katie could see other beings walking around inside the station. Some looked almost human, while others were completely different. She saw tall, thin creatures with 4 arms and blue skin. There were small, round beings that seemed to roll rather than walk. One group had tentacles instead of legs and moved like they were swimming through the air. Katie took a deep breath and picked up her bag. She had trained for 3 years to get this job. She knew more about alien biology than most people on Earth. But knowing facts from books was different from actually being here, surrounded by beings from other worlds. The docking process took another hour. When the doors finally opened, Katie stepped onto Nexus Prime for the first time. The air smelled different here, with a metallic taste that reminded her of lightning. The gravity was slightly lighter than Earth's, making her feel like she might float away if she moved too quickly. A tall man with graying hair waited for her at the dock. He wore a white lab coat over a blue uniform similar to hers. "Lieutenant Morrison?" he asked, extending his hand. "I'm Dr. Chen Wei, your supervisor. Welcome to Nexus Prime." Katie shook his hand, grateful to meet another human. "Thank you, sir. I'm excited to be here." Dr. Chen smiled, but his expression was serious. "I hope you're ready for this. Working with alien species is nothing like the simulations back on Earth. Some of our colleagues here have been studying the galaxy for thousands of years. They see humans as children who just learned to walk." As they walked through the station's corridors, Katie saw what he meant. Other researchers moved past them without making eye contact. A group of tall, elegant beings with silver skin whispered to each other in a musical language as Katie passed. Their large eyes followed her movements with what looked like amusement. "Don't let it bother you," Dr. Chen said quietly. "They'll respect you once you prove yourself. The important thing is to follow all safety rules. Some of the creatures we study here are extremely dangerous." They took an elevator to the research level. The corridors here were wider and lined with thick metal doors. Each door had warning signs in multiple languages, including English. Katie could read warnings about biological hazards, radiation, and hostile specimens. "Your main assignment will be in the behavioral studies section," Dr. Chen explained as they walked. "We have specimens from the Kythera sector that need constant observation. Most of our researchers are afraid to work with them, so this is a good opportunity for you to make a name for yourself." Katie had read about the Kythera sector during her training. It was a region of space that most civilizations avoided. The few ships that had returned from there told stories of creatures so deadly that even thinking about them could drive someone insane. "What kind of specimens?" she asked. Dr. Chen stopped walking and turned to face her. "Predators. The most dangerous ones we've ever encountered. They're kept in maximum security containment. You'll observe them through reinforced barriers and record their behavior patterns. Under no circumstances should you attempt direct contact." They reached a door marked Behavioral Studies Lab. Dr. Chen used his keycard to open it, and they stepped into a room filled with monitoring equipment. One wall was covered with screens showing different containment cells. "These are your workstations," Dr. Chen said, pointing to a desk with several computers. "Each screen shows a different specimen. Your job is to watch them and record everything they do. How they move, how they react to changes in their environment, whether they show signs of intelligence." Katie sat down at the desk and looked at the screens. Most showed creatures that looked dangerous but not particularly unusual. There were things that looked like giant insects, others that resembled dinosaurs with too many teeth. One screen showed what appeared to be a plant, but it moved in ways that plants shouldn't move. "Start with the easier specimens and work your way up," Dr. Chen said. "The most dangerous one is in cell 7. Don't spend too much time looking at it during your first week." Some researchers have reported psychological effects from prolonged observation. Katie nodded, but her eyes were already drawn to the screen labeled Cell 7. The image was darker than the others, and at first she couldn't see anything inside. Then something moved in the shadows, and for just a moment, she saw multiple eyes, reflecting light. "I'll leave you to get started," Dr. Chen said. "Remember, observation only. No interaction, no attempts at communication. These creatures are here because they're too dangerous to exist anywhere else." After he left, Katie spent the first hour watching the simpler specimens. She took notes on their movements and tried to identify patterns in their behavior. The work was interesting but not particularly challenging. Most of the creatures seemed to spend their time sleeping or pacing around their cells, but her attention kept returning to Cell 7. The darkness inside seemed to move and shift in ways that didn't make sense. Sometimes she thought she saw shapes that looked almost like a person, but then they would dissolve back into shadow. Katie increased the brightness on the screen and adjusted the contrast. The image became clearer, and she could see that the cell was larger than the others. Instead of a simple room, it seemed to be designed like a small environment with different levels and hiding places. Something moved near the back of the cell. Katie leaned forward, trying to get a better look. The creature was unlike anything she had seen before. It seemed to be made of shadow itself, with a form that constantly shifted and changed. One moment it looked almost human. The next, it resembled a large cat, then something else entirely. The most striking feature was its eyes. They appeared in different places on its body, sometimes 2, sometimes 6 or more. They glowed with a soft blue light that reminded Katie of deep ocean water. As she watched, the creature moved closer to the front of the cell. Its movements were fluid and graceful, like it was swimming through air instead of walking. Katie found herself mesmerized by the way it moved. There was something beautiful about it, despite the danger it supposedly represented. The creature stopped directly in front of the viewing camera. For a moment, Katie felt like it was looking right at her. The blue eyes seemed to focus on something beyond the screen. Then it tilted its head to one side like it was curious about something. Katie's heart started beating faster. She had been told that these creatures were mindless predators, driven only by instinct to hunt and kill. But the way this one moved and reacted suggested something else entirely. It seemed to be thinking, considering, maybe even trying to understand its surroundings. She started typing notes on her computer, describing what she was seeing. The creature's movements weren't random or aggressive. They were purposeful and controlled. It explored its environment with what looked like scientific curiosity, examining different objects and surfaces in its cell. Hours passed without Katie realizing it. She was completely focused on the creature in Cell 7, watching its every movement and trying to understand what it was doing. The longer she watched, the more convinced she became that this was no mindless predator. This was an intelligent being, possibly more intelligent than anyone had realized. When her shift ended, Katie reluctantly turned off the monitors. But she couldn't stop thinking about what she had seen. Tomorrow she would watch more carefully and take even more detailed notes. She had a feeling that this creature was going to change everything she thought she knew about the universe. Katie arrived at the lab early the next morning, eager to continue observing the creature in Cell 7. She had spent most of the night thinking about what she had seen. The way it moved and looked around suggested intelligence, but everyone on the station believed it was just a dangerous predator. She settled at her workstation and turned on the monitors. The screen showing the other specimens came to life, but Katie's attention went straight to Cell 7. The creature was in a different position than yesterday, sitting near what looked like a small pool of water in the corner of its cell. As Katie watched, the creature moved to the center of the cell and began doing something strange. It seemed to be arranging small objects on the floor in a pattern. Katie zoomed in the camera and saw that the objects were pieces of food that had been dropped into the cell during feeding time. The pattern looked almost like a star, with lines extending out from a central point. Katie had never seen any animal arrange objects in such a deliberate way. She quickly started taking notes, describing exactly what she was seeing. After finishing the pattern, the creature moved back and seemed to study its work. Then it looked up directly at the camera. Katie felt that strange sensation again, like it was looking right at her through the screen. The creature tilted its head and then pointed one of its shadowy appendages at the pattern it had made. Katie's heart raced. Was it trying to communicate? She looked around the lab to make sure no one else was watching, then reached into her lunch bag. She pulled out an apple and looked at it thoughtfully. The feeding system for the cells was automated, but there was an emergency manual override that researchers could use in special situations. She knew she wasn't supposed to interact with the specimens, but this seemed too important to ignore. Katie activated the manual feeding system for Cell 7 and dropped the apple into the cell. It landed near the creature's feet. The creature looked at the apple, then back at the camera. It picked up the apple with what appeared to be hands, though. They were made of shadow and seemed to change shape as Katie watched. The creature examined the apple carefully, turning it over and over. Then something amazing happened. The creature bit into the apple and seemed to taste it. But instead of eating it, the creature used the apple to add to its pattern on the floor. It placed the apple at the center of the star shape it had made with the other food pieces. Katie was so excited she could barely sit still. This was definitely communication. The creature was responding to her gesture by incorporating her gift into its own creation. She grabbed a piece of paper and quickly drew a simple picture of a star, similar to the pattern the creature had made. Using the manual system again, she dropped the paper into the cell. The creature approached the paper immediately and picked it up. It studied the drawing for a long time, holding it up to the light and examining it from different angles. Then the creature did something that made Katie gasp. It began to glow softly, and the glow formed patterns on its body that matched the star shape she had drawn. The creature was copying her drawing using its own body as a canvas. Katie was so focused on what was happening that she didn't hear footsteps in the corridor behind her. Suddenly, Dr. Chen's voice made her jump. "Lieutenant Morrison, what are you doing?" Katie spun around to find Dr. Chen standing behind her, along with two other researchers she didn't recognize. One was a tall alien with blue skin and 4 arms. The other was a human woman with short gray hair. "I was just observing the specimen in Cell 7, Katie said, trying to keep her voice steady. Dr. Chen looked at the monitors and saw the apple and paper in the cell. His face went pale. "Did you put those items in there?" Katie nodded reluctantly. The creature was showing signs of intelligence. "I thought it might be trying to communicate." The blue-skinned alien stepped forward. "I am Commander Zilth of the Frex Republic. Young human, do you have any idea what you have done? That creature has killed 17 researchers from 5 different species. It is not trying to communicate with you. It is studying you, learning your weaknesses so it can kill you more efficiently." "But look at what it's doing," Katie said, pointing to the screen. The creature was still glowing with the star pattern, and it had arranged the apple and paper carefully within its design on the floor. "This isn't predatory behavior. This is art or mathematics or some form of expression." The gray-haired woman shook her head. "I'm Dr. Lisa Grant, head of xenopsychology. Lieutenant, you're seeing what you want to see. These creatures are masters of psychological manipulation. It's making you think it's intelligent and friendly so you'll lower your guard." Katie looked back at the screen. The creature had stopped glowing and was now sitting quietly near its arrangement of objects. Its multiple eyes were focused on the camera, and Katie could swear she saw something like sadness in them. "Look at its body language," Katie said. "It's not aggressive or threatening. It's curious. When I gave it the apple, it didn't eat it immediately. It studied it first, then incorporated it into its pattern. That shows planning and creative thinking." Commander Zilth made a sound that might have been laughter. "Humans are too emotional for serious scientific work. You've been here 2 days and you're already forming attachments to a dangerous predator. This is exactly why your species should not be working with specimens from the Kythra sector." Dr. Chen looked uncomfortable. "Katie, I know you think you're making a breakthrough, but the safety protocols exist for good reasons. You could have compromised the containment system. What if that thing had found a way to use the items you gave it to escape?" Katie wanted to argue, but she knew she had broken the rules. She looked back at the screen one more time. The creature was still sitting quietly, but now it seemed to be watching the conversation happening outside its cell. Could it somehow sense that she was in trouble because of their interaction? Dr. Grant stepped closer to the monitor. We're going to have to remove those items from the cell and run a full security check. Lieutenant Morrison, you're confined to quarters until we can determine if you've been psychologically compromised. Compromised? Katie asked. I'm thinking clearly. I'm just observing behavior that no one else has bothered to document properly. That's exactly what someone would say if they were being manipulated, Commander Zilth replied. These creatures have had thousands of years to perfect their psychological attacks. They can make you see intelligence where there is none, friendship where there is only hunger for your death. As the security team arrived to escort Katie from the lab, she took one last look at Cell 7. The creature had moved closer to the viewing window and was pressing what looked like a hand against the transparent wall. For a moment, Katie felt a connection to this being that she couldn't explain. Walking down the corridor toward her quarters, Katie could hear Dr. Chen and the others discussing her fate. Dr. Grant wanted her sent back to Earth immediately. Commander Zilth was demanding a full psychological evaluation. Dr. Chen seemed to be arguing for a second chance, but his voice was uncertain. Katie spent the rest of the day in her small quarters, thinking about what had happened. Everyone on the station was convinced that the creature was dangerous, but Katie had seen something different. She had seen intelligence, creativity, and maybe even loneliness. The more she thought about it, the more convinced she became that the creature in Cell 7 was not the mindless predator everyone believed it to be. It was a thinking being, trapped and isolated, surrounded by people who saw it only as a monster. That night, Katie made a decision. She would find a way to prove that the creature was intelligent, even if it meant risking her career and possibly her life. The being in Cell 7 deserved to have someone understand it, and Katie was determined to be that person. She fell asleep, planning how she might get back into the lab and continue her observations. Tomorrow, she would have to be more careful, but she would not give up on the creature that had tried so hard to communicate with her. Katie sat in her quarters for 3 days, waiting to hear her fate. She was not allowed to return to work, and security guards watched her door. The only visitor she received was Dr. Chen, who brought her meals and updates on the situation. The station council is meeting tomorrow to decide what to do with you, he told her on the third evening. Commander Zilth wants you sent back to Earth immediately. Dr. Grant thinks you need psychiatric treatment. I'm trying to convince them to give you another chance, but it's not looking good. Katie looked up from the book she was pretending to read. What about the creature? Has anyone continued observing it? Dr. Chen shook his head. Cell 7 has been sealed off. No one is allowed near it until the security review is complete. The items you put in there have been removed, and the cell has been sterilized. Katie felt a stab of sadness. She wondered if the creature understood what had happened, if it knew that their brief connection had been discovered and punished. Dr. Chen, I know what I saw. That creature was trying to communicate. It showed intelligence and creativity. Doesn't that matter at all? Dr. Chen sat down across from her. Katie, I've been working with alien species for 20 years. I've seen things that would amaze you and things that would terrify you. But I've also seen researchers become obsessed with specimens, convinced they've made breakthroughs that existed only in their imagination. This is different, Katie insisted. I have detailed notes about its behavior patterns, the way it arranged objects, the way it responded to my drawing, the way it used its own body to create light patterns. That's not random predatory behavior. Or, Dr. Chen said gently, it's exactly what a very intelligent predator would do to make you trust it. That night, Katie lay awake thinking about everything that had happened. She understood why everyone was afraid of the creature. The reports from the Kitharis sector were terrifying. Ships had disappeared. Research teams had been found dead with no obvious cause. But what if those deaths had been misunderstood? What if the creatures had been defending themselves from what they saw as invaders? The next morning, Katie was escorted to the council chamber for her hearing. The room was large and circular, with representatives from different species sitting at a curved table. Commander Zilth sat at the center, his forearms folded across his chest. Dr. Grant was there, along with several other researchers Katie didn't recognize. Dr. Chen stood up to speak first. Council members Lieutenant Morrison is young and inexperienced, but she has excellent training in xenobiology. I believe her actions were motivated by scientific curiosity rather than poor judgment. Commander Zilth interrupted him. Her actions violated every safety protocol we have. She attempted to interact with a creature that has killed experienced researchers. She put the entire station at risk. Katie was given a chance to speak for herself. She stood up and faced the council, trying to keep her voice steady. I understand that I broke the rules, but I saw something that I believe is important. The creature in Cell 7 is not just a predator. It's intelligent. It tried to communicate with me using patterns and symbols. It showed creativity and purpose in everything it did. Dr. Grant leaned forward. Lieutenant, you observed this creature for less than 2 days. How can you be certain about its intelligence based on such limited contact? Katie had prepared for this question. Because it did things that no simple predator would do. It arranged objects in mathematical patterns. It responded to my drawing by creating similar patterns with its own body. It studied new objects before reacting to them. These are signs of higher intelligence. An alien researcher with tentacles instead of arms spoke up. Even if this creature has intelligence, that makes it more dangerous, not less. An intelligent predator is far more threatening than a simple one. Katie felt frustrated. But what if it's not a predator at all? What if the stories from the Kythera sector are based on misunderstandings? What if these creatures were just defending themselves? Commander Zilth stood up, his blue skin darkening with anger. 17 researchers are dead, Lieutenant. Are you suggesting they died from a misunderstanding? Before Katie could answer, the lights in the council chamber began to flicker. An alarm started sounding somewhere in the station. A voice came over the communication system. Alert. Power fluctuation in containment level. All personnel remain in current locations until situation is resolved. The council members looked at each other nervously. Power failures were rare on Nexus Prime. And when they happened, they were usually serious. How long until backup power engages? Commander Zilth asked. An engineer's voice crackled over the comm system. Backup power is online, but we had brief power loss to several containment cells. Running security checks now. Katie felt her heart racing. If the power had failed in Cell 7, the creature might have escaped. She thought about its fluid movements and the way it seemed to blend with shadows. If it was loose on the station, it could be anywhere. The security check took an hour. During that time, the council members sat in tense silence, listening to reports from different parts of the station. Several containment cells had experienced power fluctuations, but most of the specimens had remained secure. Finally, the security chief's voice came over the comm. All containment cells are secure. No breaches detected. However, we did find something unusual in Cell 7. Commander Zilth activated a screen that showed the inside of Cell 7. The creature was sitting in the exact center of the cell, completely motionless. Around it, arranged in a perfect circle, were small objects that hadn't been there before. Where did those objects come from? Dr. Grant asked. The security chief's voice was puzzled. That's what's strange. They appear to be components from the cell's environmental systems. Screws, small pieces of metal, fragments of plastic. But the creature would have had to disassemble parts of its own life support system to get them. Katie stared at the screen. The creature had the opportunity to escape during the power failure, but instead it had stayed in its cell and created another pattern. This wasn't the behavior of a dangerous predator looking for a chance to kill. This was the behavior of a being trying to communicate. It's trying to tell us something, Katie said quietly. Commander Zilth turned to her. What did you say? Katie stood up and pointed to the screen. Look at the pattern. It's not random. The creature had a chance to escape when the power failed, but it didn't. Instead, it made another arrangement. It's trying to communicate with us. Dr. Grant shook her head. It's manipulating us. It wants us to think it's harmless, so we'll lower our guard. But Katie noticed something else. The objects in the circle weren't just randomly placed, they seemed to be arranged in a specific pattern that looked almost like a map or diagram. "Council members," Katie said, "I request permission to attempt formal communication with the specimen, under controlled conditions with full security present. If I'm wrong about its intelligence, nothing will happen. But if I'm right, we might be making the most important first contact in galactic history." The council members discussed this in whispers. Katie could see that some of them were curious despite their fears. Finally, Commander Zilth spoke. "Very well, Lieutenant Morrison. You will have one opportunity to attempt communication, but it will be under strict security protocols. Any sign of aggressive behavior from the creature, and the test will be terminated immediately." Katie felt a mixture of excitement and terror. She was about to try to communicate with a being that everyone believed was a deadly predator. But she was convinced that she was right about its intelligence. Tomorrow she would have her chance to prove it. That night, Katie prepared for the most important day of her life. She studied everything she could about first contact protocols and communication methods. She was determined to show the galaxy that the creature in Cell 7 was not a monster, but a thinking being that deserved understanding and respect. Katie stood outside Cell 7 with her heart pounding. The communication attempt was scheduled to begin in 1 hour, and she felt both excited and terrified. Around her, security guards from 3 different species stood ready with weapons. Dr. Chen checked the recording equipment one more time, while Commander Zilth watched everything with suspicious eyes. "Remember, Lieutenant," Commander Zilth said, "at the first sign of aggressive behavior, you step back immediately. We have stun weapons aimed at the creature, and the containment field can be strengthened instantly." Katie nodded, but she wasn't really listening. She was looking through the transparent wall at the creature inside. It sat perfectly still in the center of its cell, surrounded by the circle of objects it had arranged during the power failure. Its multiple eyes were focused on her, and she felt that strange connection again. Dr. Grant approached with a tablet computer. "We've prepared a series of mathematical concepts for you to try. Start with simple numbers, then move to basic geometric shapes. If the creature truly has intelligence, it should be able to respond to mathematical concepts." Katie took the tablet and looked at the first image. It showed 3 dots arranged in a triangle. Simple enough to start with. "Beginning communication attempt," Dr. Chen announced, starting the recording equipment. Katie held up the tablet so the creature could see the screen through the transparent wall. The 3 dots were clearly visible. She waited, watching for any reaction. The creature moved closer to the wall. Its form shifted and changed as it approached, becoming more solid and defined. Katie could see that it had what looked like arms and legs, though they seemed to be made of living shadow that constantly moved and flowed. Then something amazing happened. The creature raised one of its arms and touched the wall. Where it touched, 3 points of blue light appeared, arranged in exactly the same triangle pattern as the dots on Katie's tablet. Katie felt excitement rush through her. "It understood," she whispered. She quickly switched to the next image on the tablet. This one showed 4 dots arranged in a square. The creature studied the image for a moment, then created 4 points of light on the wall in the same pattern. "Remarkable," Dr. Chen said quietly. "It's definitely responding to the mathematical concepts." Katie continued with more complex patterns. 5 dots in a pentagon, 6 in a hexagon, then a simple addition problem showing 2 dots plus 3 dots equals 5 dots. Each time the creature responded correctly using points of light on the wall. Commander Zilth stepped forward. "This proves nothing. Many animals can be trained to recognize patterns. It doesn't mean the creature is truly intelligent." But Katie had prepared for this objection. She put down the tablet and pulled out a piece of paper with a drawing she had made herself. It was a simple sketch of the space station, showing the circular structure with docking bays extending from the sides. She held up the drawing for the creature to see. This time, the creature's reaction was different. It stepped back from the wall and began to glow all over its body. The glow formed patterns that Katie recognized as a 3-dimensional representation of the space station, but shown from an angle that no one inside the station could possibly see. How does it know what the station looks like from the outside? Dr. Grant asked, her voice filled with surprise. Katie felt a chill run down her spine. The creature wasn't just intelligent. It had knowledge about things it shouldn't be able to know. She looked at the patterns of light on its body more carefully and realized something shocking. Those aren't just pictures of our station, she said slowly. Look at the details. It's showing us structural weaknesses, power distribution systems, even the locations of the weapon systems. The security guards raised their weapons, but Katie held up her hand. Wait, it's not threatening us, it's trying to tell us something important. The creature's glow changed, showing new patterns. Now it was displaying what looked like a map of the local star system, with several ships moving toward the station. The ships were not using the normal approach routes that friendly vessels would take. Is it showing us an attack? Katie asked. As if in response to her question, the creature's patterns became more urgent. It showed the approaching ships surrounding the station, then displayed what looked like an explosion. Suddenly, alarms began sounding throughout the station. Commander Zilth grabbed his communication device as voices crackled through from the command center. Commander, we have unknown ships approaching from multiple directions. They're not responding to communication attempts and their weapons are powered up. Commander Zilth stared at the creature, then at Katie. How did it know? Katie stepped closer to the wall separating her from the creature. It's been trying to warn us, that's what the patterns were about. It wasn't trying to threaten us, it was trying to tell us about danger coming to the station. The creature moved to the wall again and began creating new patterns. This time the lights showed what looked like a battle plan. It displayed the best defensive positions for the station's weapons, the weak points in the attacking ships, and escape routes for civilian evacuation. Dr. Chen was recording everything frantically. This is incredible. It's providing us with tactical information. But how does it know all this? Commander Zilth demanded. Katie looked at the creature's eyes and suddenly understood. You're not just intelligent. You're more advanced than we. Aren't you? Your people have technology we can't even imagine. The creature's glow pulsed once, which Katie interpreted as agreement. Then why were you captured? Why didn't you escape? The creature created new patterns, showing what looked like a lone figure approaching a group of others. The lone figure was captured, but it didn't resist. Katie realized what she was seeing. You'd let yourself be captured on purpose. You knew about the attack that was coming, and you needed to warn us. Another pulse of light confirmed her guess. Commander, Zilth was speaking rapidly into his communication device, relaying the tactical information the creature was providing. The station's weapon systems came online, and evacuation procedures began for non-essential personnel. How long do we have? Katie asked the creature. The patterns on its body showed numbers. Katie counted carefully. 15 minutes, she announced. Dr. Grant looked at the creature with new respect. If this information is accurate, it just saved thousands of lives. Katie pressed her hand against the wall where the creature was touching from the other side. Through the transparent barrier, she felt a strange warmth. What's your name? She asked softly. The creature's body began to glow in complex patterns that hurt Katie's eyes to look at directly. But somehow she understood the meaning. Vexhai, she said aloud. Your name is Vexhai. The creature pulsed with what Katie now recognized as confirmation. Vexhai, why are they attacking us? The patterns that formed in response were more complex. Katie saw images of ships mining something from planets, of creatures like Vexhai being hunted and killed, of corruption and lies spreading through the galaxy's government. Someone is destroying your people's worlds, and they're covering it up by making everyone afraid of you. Vexhai's glow became sad and dim. The battle alarms got louder, and Katie could hear explosions in the distance. The attack had begun. Vexhai, Katie said urgently, can you help us fight them? The creature's patterns showed hesitation. It displayed images of itself using powerful abilities, but also showed the fear and hatred this would cause among the station's inhabitants. Katie understood the dilemma. If Vexhai revealed its true capabilities, it would confirm everyone's worst fears about its species. But if it didn't help, the station might be destroyed and thousands would die. I trust you, Katie said simply. And I'll make sure others understand that you're trying to help us." Vexhai looked at her for a long moment, then began to glow brighter than ever before. The light was so intense that Katie had to shield her eyes. When the light faded, Vexhai's form had changed completely. It now appeared more solid and defined, with clearly visible arms, legs, and what might have been a face. But most importantly, Katie realized that the containment field was no longer active. Vexhai was free and the real battle was about to begin. The containment field around Cell 7 flickered and died. Vexhai stepped through the opening and Katie saw its true form for the first time. It stood nearly 7 feet tall, with a body that seemed to be made of living darkness but held a definite shape. Its multiple eyes glowed with soft blue light, and when it moved, it barely made a sound. The security guards immediately raised their weapons, but Katie stepped between them and Vexhai. "Don't shoot," she said firmly. "It's here to help us." Commander Zilth looked torn between fear and desperation. "How do we know it won't kill us all the moment we lower our guard?" Another explosion shook the station, and the lights flickered. Vexhai moved to a wall panel and pressed its hand against it. Suddenly all the monitors in the area came to life, showing views of the battle outside. Katie could see at least 12 attack ships surrounding the station. They were firing energy weapons at the station's shields, which were already showing signs of damage. The station's own weapons were firing back, but the attackers were too fast and well coordinated. Vexhai created light patterns on its body that Katie was beginning to understand as its form of speech. The patterns showed the attack ships using tactics that the station's defenders couldn't counter. "It's showing us their strategy," Katie translated. "The attack ships are using a rotating pattern to avoid our weapons while concentrating fire on weak points in our shields." Dr. Chen was still recording everything. "How can it know their tactics?" Vexhai's patterns changed, showing images that made Katie gasp. She saw the same attack ships at other locations, destroying research facilities and mining operations throughout the galaxy. This wasn't a random attack on Nexus Prime, it was part of something much larger. "These ships have attacked other places," Katie said. "This is organized. Someone is systematically destroying research stations and anyone who might discover what they're really doing in the Kythera sector." Commander Zilth grabbed his communication device. "Command Center, this is Zilth. The attacking ships are part of a larger organization. They've done this before. Adjust defensive strategies accordingly." Vexhai moved toward the exit of the lab, gesturing for Katie and the others to follow. Katie didn't hesitate, but the security guards looked uncertain. "Where is it taking us?" Dr. Grant asked nervously. Katie watched Vexhai's movements and body language. Despite its alien appearance, she was learning to read its intentions. "To somewhere we can help defend the station," she said. "It has a plan." They followed Vexhai through corridors that Katie had never seen before. It moved with complete confidence, as if it knew the station's layout better than the people who lived there. Katie realized that during its time in containment, Vexhai had been studying everything about Nexus Prime. They reached a section of the station that housed the main defensive systems. Vexhai approached a sealed door that required high-level security clearance to open. It placed its hand on the door's control panel, and Katie expected alarms to sound. Instead, the door opened immediately. "How did it do that?" Commander Zilth demanded. Vexhai's body pattern showed complex technical diagrams. Katie tried to understand what she was seeing. "I think it can interface directly with electronic systems," she said. "Its species might have technology that works on completely different principles than ours." Inside the defensive control room, Vexhai approached the main weapons console. Several technicians were working frantically to coordinate the station's response to the attack, but they were clearly losing the battle. Vexhai's hand touched the console, and suddenly all the displays changed. New information appeared showing the exact positions of the attacking ships, their weak points, and the optimal firing solutions for the station's weapons. "Sir," one of the technicians called out, "I'm getting targeting data that's more accurate than anything our sensors can provide. It's like someone is feeding us information from inside the enemy ships." Commander Zilth looked at Vexhai with amazement. "You're helping us target them?" Vexhai's patterns pulsed with confirmation, then changed to show something that made Katie's heart race. The patterns displayed an image of Vexhai itself moving through space, approaching the attack ships. "You're going out there?" Katie asked. Vexhai moved to another console and began interfacing with the station's systems. Katie watched as atmospheric readings changed in one of the docking bays. Vexhai was preparing to leave the station. "Wait," Katie said urgently. "You can't go out there alone. Those ships will destroy you." Vexhai's patterns showed images that Katie interpreted as reassurance. It displayed its own people moving through space without ships, traveling faster than the attacking vessels could follow. Dr. Chen looked at the readings on his instruments. "It doesn't need a spaceship. Its species can survive in space naturally." Katie felt a mix of awe and fear. Vexhai was far more advanced than any of them had imagined. But she was also worried about what would happen if it left the station. "If you go out there and fight those ships, everyone will think you're the monster they believed you were," she said to Vexhai. Vexhai's patterns became gentle and sad. It showed images of Katie and itself working together, followed by images of understanding spreading between different species. Then it showed the alternative: the station destroyed, thousands dead, and the truth about the Kythera sector remaining, hidden forever. Katie understood. Vexhai was willing to sacrifice its own reputation to save lives. "Then I'm coming with you," Katie said. Everyone in the room turned to stare at her. Commander Zilth stepped forward. "Lieutenant Morrison, you can't survive in space." Katie looked at Vexhai. "Can you protect me out there?" Vexhai's patterns showed uncertainty, then determination. It approached Katie and extended what looked like a hand made of shadow. When Katie took it, she felt a strange tingling sensation spread through her body. Suddenly she could breathe more easily and the temperature in the room felt different. Somehow Vexhai was sharing its natural abilities with her. "Incredible," Dr. Grant whispered. "It's creating a life support field around her." Katie and Vexhai moved toward the docking bay together. Behind them, the defensive systems continued to fire at the attacking ships using the targeting information Vexhai had provided. Several enemy ships had already been damaged, but more were arriving. In the docking bay, Katie watched as Vexhai prepared for space travel. Its form became even more fluid, and it seemed to absorb energy directly from the station's power systems. "Are you ready?" Katie asked. Vexhai's patterns pulsed with what she now recognized as affection. It had become fond of her, just as she had become fond of it. The airlock opened and they moved out into space together. Katie had never been outside a ship without a spacesuit before, but Vexhai's protective field kept her safe. She could see the battle raging around the station, with energy beams crossing the darkness like deadly lightning. Vexhai moved toward the nearest attack ship with Katie beside it. As they approached, Katie realized that the attacking ships weren't crewed by any species she recognized. They seemed to be automated, controlled by artificial intelligence. "They're robots," she said, though she wasn't sure if Vexhai could hear her in space. But Vexhai's patterns confirmed her observation. The ships were unmanned, which explained their precise coordination and ruthless tactics. Vexhai approached the first ship and placed its hands on the hull. Immediately, the ship's weapons stopped firing and its engines shut down. Within minutes, Vexhai had disabled 3 more ships in the same way. Katie watched in amazement as her companion moved through the battle like a ghost, shutting down enemy ships without destroying them. The other attack ships tried to target Vexhai, but it moved too fast and seemed to bend light around itself, becoming nearly invisible. Within an hour, all the attacking ships were disabled and drifting powerlessly in space. The battle was over and Nexus Prime was safe. As they returned to the station, Katie looked at Vexhai with deep respect and gratitude. This being had risked everything to save people who had feared and mistrusted it. Back in the docking bay, Katie was surprised to find Commander Zilth, Dr. Chen, Dr. Grant, and dozens of other researchers waiting for them. Instead of weapons, they carried instruments and recording equipment. "We want to learn," Commander Zilth said simply. "Will you teach us?" Vexhai looked at Katie, its patterns asking a question she understood perfectly. "Yes," Katie said with a smile. "We want to be friends." The patterns that formed on Vexhi's body were the most beautiful Katie had ever seen. They spoke of hope, friendship, and a future where different species could understand each other despite their fears. Katie Morrison had come to Nexus Prime as a rookie researcher. She was leaving as humanity's first ambassador to one of the galaxy's most misunderstood species, and beside her stood Vexhi, no longer a prisoner but a partner in building a better future for all the galaxy's children.